Welcome to User Insights, a podcast series powered by UXArmy.
All right. Hi, everyone. Today we have with us Divya Kulshreshtha, Principal Designer at Naukri.com. He is a designer, a researcher, strategic thinker. He wears many, many hats and has a decade into this craft. And previously, he led pan-India research for brands like Medtronic and Samsung. And over time, he has moved from research into more of a full stack product design role with companies at Paytm, Udan, Capillary, and Freshworks. And basically, his journey has been uh, quite transitional, I would say, from user research to creating insights and ultimately to create business impact. So, welcome, Divya, and look forward to
Yeah.
asking you a lot of questions today.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's lovely talking to you as well.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, to begin our conversation, I mean, I have a lot of questions, but I want to discuss what's on everyone's mind, which is a lot to do with, of course, the two words that we are haunted by, AI. So, with AI coming into almost every aspect of the design process, quite a lot of adoption has happened, and the build part and the execution part, but also quite a bit in the research side of things. So overall, with AI reducing the time from idea to shipped product, teams can now like test and release things way faster than they could before, right? So from your point of view, how do you think this has changed the role of user research when it comes to like doing day-to-day decisions? Of course, you're experienced on multiple parts of the journey, so I'd love to
Yeah,
hear your thoughts.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I think thanks for highlighting that part, right? So because I've seen the journey from like starting from problem discovery point of view for research, and then trying to convert that research insights into some actionable ideas, and then as a product designer trying to create some sort of like artifacts out of it, and then as a product and business thinker as well, trying to see if the market can have a value for it or not, right? So I see the whole journey end to end. So I definitely see AI has changed every bit of my process basically. But to answer from a user research point of view, I think let's think of it at the basics, right? Or user research starts from problem discovery, I would say. So that part, and then the synthesis part, how do you conduct the research itself? You conduct the interactions with the users and stuff like that, and then how you synthesize those insights, and then you present them into a certain like a certain presentable format, right? I think each of these parts AI has changed. Like in my own experience itself, we are using Notebook LM quite extensively to sort of, like once we're done with the interviews, logistics part, I think AI also is kind of changing quite a lot because AI can now reach out to the users on your behalf and try to schedule some of these calls, interviews and stuff like that, do all that part of the journey. Once the conversation happens, I can use Notebook LM to sort of, consume some of those inputs and then add my own resources from other things that I know what from the strategy point of view and all that, and try to convert it into actionable ideas, right? So I think the whole part of the journey, let's think of it like that step-by-step journey. And I think every aspect you will see that AI has played a role in many ways, right? And it has some parts it has made very much productive for us to, sort of like automate the aspect of scheduling the calls, recruiting the right people and stuff like that. And certain aspects, still the human is in the control part of it, right? We are still responsible for the assimilation of those inputs, the insights part of it, right? The human touch is still required because Notebook LM or some of these tools cannot still do that kind of justice to the insight as well. That right. So I would say, I mean, there's still a long way to go. I think it's starting out in this small way. I think we have to see from the step-by-step journey of a researcher's life, and you will see that AI is there everywhere. But I think the end-to-end packaging still a human has to do. So that it becomes like consumable. That's I think
Right.
how I think about it. Maybe.
That makes that I can relate to that. Yeah, definitely using AI in different aspects of my day to day as well. From a quick brainstorm with the AI into
Yeah.
like getting in deeper into something and then executing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Actually, something you said sparked another question in my mind, right? Where you was talking about uh, translating the insights and sharing it with others.
Yeah.
So, how do you think AI accelerates this execution of the insights, and more importantly, like human being in control versus the AI summarizing things. I'd like your take on that as well. Like, what does responsible research look like
Yeah,
with
yeah.
AI?
No, I think that's a very relevant question today because with AI, obviously you can put a lot of garbage inside the system and you can expect to put it out a lot of garbage out of it, right? So you can call it as an insight, but it may not be on point to the reality of the user, right? So I think definitely there is a very relevant question to ask right now, that how do we put the guardrails at the input source itself so that the whatever we are trying to ask and generate insights upon, it's doing justice to the insights, right? Justice to the users, day in life scenarios and stuff like that, right? So for example, I'll give you a simple my own work life example, right? So in Notebook LM, we are trying to closely put guardrails in terms of who's conducting interviews and who's ingesting some of those interviews into the system before we can generate insights. So a simple action of putting a process around it, putting guardrails around it, having a responsible person who understands the empathy of what a user would be doing. So a researcher's empathy will be very relevant here at that point. That guardrail actually helps itself to actually, you don't put garbage inside the system so that you don't confuse the outputs and you don't generate something which is like hallucinations more than the real user's life, right? For example, synthetic users is a hot topic right now, right? So you don't want to talk to synthetic users so much. You want a evolved version of your users understanding, but you don't want to go in a complete virtualization of your experience, right? You don't want some random person to answer random thoughts, basically, right? That's how I think about it, right? So if you don't put garbage inside, you don't get garbage outside. So a
Right.
researcher's job has always been, like put the right emphasis on the right users, recruiting the right people, conducting the interviews with the right stakeholders in the right manner, right empathy, collecting the right way of, the observation that is there on the ground, then translate that into synthesis, like in a control environment where AI is sort of like helpful for you. Like, for example,
Right.
Notebook LM can help you do that. Dovetail can help you do that right now because you have a lot of these interviews getting simulated in Dovetail in a single manner. And there's another tool that we have been using called Gong, where you have all the sales conversations being put together in one single view, and any designer like me or a researcher like me can actually put in a query and understand what is a user talking about from that context. Right? So we put the guardrails where you ensure that these sources have their own sanctities there. You don't, you don't violate the sanctity of those sources. Then you can probably get the right output. And then the AI can be in a way very helpful for you as well. I would say.
Got it. So would you say that AI's role there is to help you in sense making of all the different
Yes.
feedback
Yeah.
coming in, and then
Yeah.
the researcher's role is kind of like a manager of the insights and making sure things are, they make sense for anyone who's trying to consume the insights. Then,
Yeah.
what is your take as a designer? Not so much as a researcher, but if you switch hats to a design person who is taking that AI to help with the understanding of the insights, right? What do you think is the guardrail there that one designer may have to keep in mind, for instance?
Like, for example, in my practice, I ensure that whenever I'm using any AI tool to generate insights, I always ask my research partner to actually enable that process for me. I don't do it on my own. I don't use synthetic users as such directly to generate insights for me. What I do in terms of my own process as a designer, I would say I will put the guardrails of who am I talking to. So, for example, in a recent project, I asked my research partner, can you tell me what we have done already in this particular area? What all knowledge do we have right now? Let's start from that. And whatever is missing, can you help me set up a notebook LM where I can actually use the info that you've created for yourself? Can I use that as part of my own inquisitions and my own queries, basically? So that's how I would say, like, you talk to the right stakeholders. That's simplest thing you can do in the context. Second is, obviously you can plan to do your own research and all that, but that takes an effort. And I'll tell in terms of, like, because I've worked in so many organizations in the career, so I know it's not very easy. It's not very easy to coordinate some of these calls, get those people into the room, and get their perspectives in place. It's such a difficult task to accomplish, basically, right? So I'd say the easiest way is to talk to your research partner or research thinker in the team that you have, equivalent of that. That could be one starting point. And then if you don't have it, then build your own practice, build your own approach, and try to do justice to the users by talking to them at least once, recording those conversations, using AI to synthesize those conversations. That is what you can do. Like, I use a lot of my Notebook LM analysis is actually happening on the transcript of those people, not in terms of how I'm talking to those people. Like,
Right.
that's the way we can control it, maybe, that guardrail could actually be helpful.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so apart from I guess we spoke about how AI influences research. Another sort of constant pressure that both research, design, product, everyone is feeling is moving fast, right? And often, in order to move fast, uh, I think in the past it was the fastest you can speak to each other is how you can move fast. But now that speaking to each other, yes, we need to get better at, but at least AI tools and other platforms, when UXArmy is trying to build ways for you to actually um, move faster in terms of giving you the insights that become the jump off point for you to actually get into the real conversation and make decisions, right? So when research can start being run very quickly and do things remotely, what type of decisions do you think benefit most from like rapid studies? Like when do you decide uh, should we do a quick round of research, or what needs a deeper round of research? What's your take on that?
Sure. That's an interesting one. I think, see, if I see from my work's perspective, right, I think you need to understand what you already know about the space. So before you even start executing a plan for research, whether it's a quick research or a long-term research, whatever, right, deeper research, you should need to understand like what do we already know about that space, about that particular user. So as I said, I think the starting point for me always is whatever repository I have for my user knowledge. Like for example, Dovetail is there in my system or notebook LMs are there for my system. Can I start querying that up and then summarize the knowledge first of all? That's the starting point. I think that is one way definitely will give you like a quick understanding of, hey, I know this much only about this space and I'm trying to create a very delta experience for the user. And there's a big question I'm trying to solve. So let me go very fundamental about it. So let me just then do a deeper research or a deep dive in that context. That is one easy way to come to that stage of knowledge. The other scenario that I see is where you are in the journey also matters, because I've seen the whole journey design process part of it end to end, like the whole product delivery model that we have in India and across design teams in the world as well. You need to know like I am very much early in the space. I know very less about the space. So I need a deep dive. I need explorative research. I need ethnographic studies. I need some of those kind of knowledge to be there to build some perspectives. If I'm very late in terms of like, for example, I've already built some concepts, hypotheses are already in place. AI has helped me to analyze a lot of synthetic data to actually be able to hypothesize what is happening to the end user and stuff like that. So maybe I've built some ideas. I want to test it out quickly. So can I do this thing unmonitoredly? Can I test out some of those ideas, right? So that's a very small study that you can do actually in that context. So where you are in the process matters and how much knowledge do you already have in that space matters. I think these two things can actually be a good matrix to think about. I mean, researchers are very good at synthesizing in terms of matrices, right? Or X and Y.
Yeah.
Can give you like a plan in place, basically, right? Where do I see the research going, basically, right? And
Right.
obviously, a lot of times I think AI can actually be like a good sounding board as well. I use personally, for example, GPT as a lot of my sounding board decisions, basically, I do, right? I put up my thoughts across to that tool and then it just gives me a reflective question. I would keep asking not for answer, but reflective questions. That's another thing I do. That it's like not giving me solutions, but it is giving me counter thoughts.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting. I should do more of that. Shifting gears slightly, I think we spoke about frameworks for moving fast and deep, faster and shallow versus deep, right? Fast and slow, sorry, and shallow and deep. Another question I had was access, right, to your users. Now, not everyone works on products where it's easy to talk to your users. Some users are some products you're lucky to work on, which has a wide user base like Naukri. I'm sure you have a lot of audience that you can reach out to and test, whereas some products you're building for a very niche audience may be harder to reach. So when you have, let's say, access to a lot of users, can you share your experience talking to your stakeholders and discussing when is the right time to do a research, right? And let's say access to the user was easy, but the team decided I don't want to research. Like where was the gap? Like why would you take such a decision?
I mean, if I answer this thing very honestly, right? And
Yes, please.
because I've been part of a lot of enterprise organizations in the recent times, like with Freshworks and with Naukri as well in the recent times. Even if the access is easy, it is still difficult to actually align people to come to that point that we should do user research. It's not very easy. I'm sure anybody who's listening to the podcast also as a researcher will know that it's difficult to sell user research in the organization as well. It is very idealistic for me to say that, yeah, I want to do all the studies and X and Y and all. I had the same academic training, so I also had the same feeling. But it is very difficult. And interestingly, because in my career, when I started my journey, I was a consultant, so I was getting a lot of research projects hands-on to me directly. That was something in my mind also was like an ideal world I have put together. That, okay, it's very easy to do research. Or it's very, everybody is aligned to do research in the organizations, right? But what I was actually getting projects to work upon are a very handful of companies in the country who were intentionally spending into research. So it's not very easy to get the alignment of people to actually conduct research in the first place. But that being said, how do you do that, right? Something I've tried in Capillary because I was the first researcher there. I was trying to build a research function as well as a design function as well there in my small area that I was focusing on, basically. So what we started doing was a lot of immersion of the leadership can actually happen, right? I started engaging a lot of my leaders in terms of, hey, we as a company are focusing on customers, shoppers. Let us understand what are the different mental model of these shoppers. As simple as that, I started doing workshops with them. A lot of these immersion sessions that you do with the leadership can actually bring people together to understand the value of what we're trying to deliver, right? And especially researchers. I was just overhearing one of my friend who was, sharing his research knowledge to another product team member. And he was like, yeah, it's too long for me to even consume. And that keyword was there. I knew that, what has happened is that guy is not sold so much. Even if the researcher has put a heart and soul in terms of putting 4 good sentences of thoughts and all, that guy doesn't need that 4 sentence. He just needs one good idea to sell to the other guy, basically. So
Right.
this is how in the organization, if I answer from a very practical point of view, the reality is it's very difficult to sell. Now, how do you sell it and how do you bring it together? In my mind, I think, if you think of it, I think start immersing your leaders, start bringing them together, get them empathize with the whole context, and make them aware that if you don't do this investment, somebody else is doing this investment. That also helps. Product people understand it from that lens very strongly. Hey, we are as a company, UXArmy may be a good platform, but the user testing platform is doing 10x amount of effort in the user research part. They're doing faster iteration of cycle of product development also. Let us invest in this space and let us disrupt the whole space like that, right? So immersion, selling to your stakeholders helps quite a lot. Once that has happened, then I think it's easy for a researcher to plan the whole thing, right? Then you can decide when you want to do research, how you want to do research. What can happen actually.
Got it. So I guess the gaps are always convincing stakeholders to sort of agree to doing the research, and then getting that, once you have that buy-in, is just, aligning everyone to actually get involved.
Yeah,
That's my takeaway
So
from what you
a
said.
good metaphor for this one, actually, with the way I put it to my friends also, is that it's like a picnic. You want people to go, but you need to sell the idea of picnic to everybody.
Right.
Unless you sell that idea and then the benefit of it or the kind of experience that we'll get together, the whole experience, that if you're able to sell your friends a picnic idea or a trip idea, road trip idea, you can sell research to your team members, and that's the same dynamics works. It works. Right? So you need to identify what's the USPs or the value adds for this particular XYZ person. Similarly, answer the same question in your context. That's it. That's
Makes
how it can
makes
actually
a lot
simply
of
solve it.
sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So another thing that I wanted to bring up was, now with AI, a lot of our roles are blurring, and things are more democratized, right? Things that were more sacred to designers. This is my Figma file, I own it, is no longer the case, because AI is able to spit out prototypes and production ready stuff now. Similar sort of change is happening with the research side of things as well, where the speed of summarizing or understanding market benchmarks and understanding the market and understanding a product fit idea, right? That knowledge part is also getting crunched down quite a bit in terms of speed and the access to it for designers, for PMs. So it's no longer just a researcher thing anymore. So how do you decide, like, when quick feedback is enough from AI giving you a summary, versus knowing that deeper research is actually quite needed, especially as a PM or a designer? I'm not asking you this question as a researcher, so maybe you switch your hats again.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No. I mean, that's the right hat to answer this question as well, now, because the researchers ultimately are tied up to this whole process, basically, right? We are the end stakeholders ultimately. I think, again, I would say, I mean, we've discussed this point in a different way, but I would say that the process that is there, right? Design process that is there, if you're very early in the process and you actually are not having much knowledge in that space, right? Again, if you're able to, like you don't have any past historical evidences of how a user behave in that particular, space, right? Ultimately, if you are having that knowledge is they're not existing so much, you need to invest in that research part, right? You need to invest in that aspect of it. Synthetic data can actually help you build good hypothesis, but nothing else, nothing more than that actually, right? These are just hypotheses that you are actually putting together. I think in the past, I remember when I was doing research into the pan-India context, right? We used to do a lot of internet research to build some quick hypothesis which you're going to test it in the ground. So that is what is getting faster with the AI now. But the decision to make, okay, I don't know much about this space. Can I get a fundamental view about the space? Can I do a very deep dive into the whole space? That decision, I think, has still remained the same. Nothing has changed with the AI immersion as well so much. If you are very early and you don't know much about the space, you don't have any data that can actually back you up with your ideas and insights. You don't have any historical evidence of the user conversation as well. So you don't need to you obviously need to take a pause and invest into research at that time, right?
do you feel that with AI, right, you can create a quick summary with a few prompts and it may give you sort of a talking point with stakeholders, but then it also runs the risk of ChatGPT told me, so you must believe that it is true, and it might be true for some products, but not necessarily your product. Have you faced a situation where like a stakeholder is saying, "I ChatGPT said this," and then you're like, "But that doesn't make sense." So, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we do face. Everybody faces nowadays because GPT has gone so advanced in terms of the reasoning part of it. It can answer like a human like expression can also happen, right? So we all have faced, I think, all in our career. I have personally faced it myself as well. Uh, I would say, I mean, like that is again a hypothesis somebody is putting together. In my mind, that's what I keep telling that person. Take a step back. That my phrase in my conversation with these people, whoever especially says ChatGPT says X and Y and all that, I always say, can you take a step back and see like what is the possible reason why ChatGPT is recommending this? Let's think of it like that. So because we have kind of started assuming ChatGPT is so right about things that we are taking it on the face value. But why should we not question it? Why should we not think of it like, hey, it may not be the best researcher in the town, right? It may actually not be very great in putting the thoughts together also. And that I think is the case every time. If you do deep question to the models, they will not answer you very crisply. They will not be able to answer that. I think we all have tried this, where we have tried, can you create personas X and Y and Z? And can from that lens help me understand critical product and then answer those gaps in the product, right? For example, it might give you answer to satisfy your needs, but if you ask the person, can you take a step back and answer like why is this recommending this X, Y, Z statement, right? Then the answer will come up. Then you start realizing that it's not so smart as we are thinking about it, right? Like, for example, I recently tried to critique as much as possible. Like, again, keep questioning the model itself. You keep critiquing it. Can you critique your own thoughts? Why are you suggesting this thing? The more reflective question you can ask a person, just like you would ask a researcher as well, can actually help you answer that, in my opinion, right? I'll have something that I've personally worked and helped very quite extensively my work also. Keep asking it, keep being a devil's advocate. I think that's another phrase, right? Devil's advocate. Right. So why not we just do a devil's advocate to the GPT answer as well, right? So that can actually help you. It's always good to take the value as a good starting point for hypothesis, but it's a hypothesis, not an answer. And then at the research space, people understand that what's an hypothesis and what's not an answer. That's where those space where we lie actually, right? Where we all thrive upon basically, right? In terms of building the insights and everything.
Okay. Another question I have for you is about doing remote research, right? Could you share from your past experiences or even your current workplace? How does that work for you guys as a team? And when will you use remote research?
I think whenever access to the user is so difficult, I mean, like for example, if I have to talk to, recently a researcher friend of mine, he had to travel to different tourist destinations in India to understand how a hotel staff actually is, experiencing his day-to-day life. How is he looking at his career? Because the access to that user on an online platform was very difficult. If you wanted to, for example, ask that person to be on a video call and talk to us, it's not possible. So obviously you have to go to the context of the person and then be able to answer that question, right? So there, I think access to certain people, certain roles are very difficult to have. Then remote research cannot actually play a role. But some places, like for example, in my context, I'm talking to a lot of recruiters who are hiring across India for different kind of roles. It's easy for me to reach them with this channel, right? So that I think another way. I think COVID made us all comfortable with this idea of remote research and all that. But personally, in my experience, transitioning, from the in-person research to remote research, what I've seen is people don't relate to you so much when you're on a video call, basically, right? You are not a human being. You are just a graphic which is moving, right? So obviously that bias is going to come in the answers as well. That's why I think the value of day in life actually is daily life scenarios, daily life studies, diary studies are actually relevant because you want the person to be able to be comfortable in the context and share the real truth. That's the challenge with remote research, that the real truth may not even come out unless the person is made comfortable, and a lot of things can happen that way, right? So I believe there's a value in this remote research when you actually, for example, maybe having a moderator in the context, for example. A lot of times in my previous experience, also people, what they used to do is they will have a moderator who travels to that particular place, empathizes the people, sensitizes them to the idea and everything. And then they come up with a warm gesture to the video call, and then you can talk to them. You can enable those processes. That's one way I think we can think of unlocking the power of it. Of course, the access to the user is very difficult. But I have personally felt that it's always good to be in the context. Why is the people asking everybody to come to office now? Work from office is the real trend right now, right? 3 years back, it was work from home was the trend. Everybody was saying the work will completely go virtual, right?
Yeah.
But now people realize, the collaboration is not happening so much. The human gesture is not there. The connection is not happening. X and Y and thoughts, right? So now the whole trend is towards work from office again, which I think is another example to think about the remote research. There's a value to it, but that people realizes, okay, the balance has to be made somewhere. That's how I think about it, if I have to maybe answer that.
I can sort of relate. I work remotely, but meeting some of my peers earlier last year, that made a lot of difference in the bond you share when you're building something together. Again, touching on the topic of remote research, and now with some tools, enabling AI to do the moderated sessions as well. What's your take on that? When AI is being the researcher in the room, as you mentioned, the empathy is a big part of ensuring you get good quality feedback from people. Having that comfort level with the user. What's your take on AI being the researcher in the room?
So I think I've seen it from two lenses, actually, this question, right? So I've seen AI being used to sort of conduct the whole session itself, where somebody is, like an interview is happening with an AI, right? And a lot of people have used this thing as a product space to actually build a lot of SaaS tools where you can actually conduct interviews virtually and stuff like that, right? That's one space I see that. The other space around that is, I also think that I think is the more relevant space in this context, is you let the people use your product in their own environments. In the old times, we used to generate heat maps out of it and used to see recordings of these recording dump we used to get, actually, right? Of these users using our product. Now, a friend of mine from my team actually has been very smart in terms of building an AI agent which analyzes that and understand where the gaps are, where the person is pausing so much, where is the flow, which there is taking lot many of time, actually, that way, right? So all the basic analysis it's already doing and serving it as an insight to the user, to us. Now that, I think, is this still a relevant use case in my mind. I think the first one, I think, will not work because it's in any case difficult for a person to interact to a virtual human being on a camera. But the second level of complexity is that the person itself is not real. That again, you will have a lot of possibility of people not saying the real truth. AI not going deep enough, everything staying on the surface part of it, everything being very shallow. And the other side of the story is more relevant and more applicable and a more very profitable use case, where the whole hard work of seeing recordings, building insights, all that can actually be automated very easily. That, I think, still sees a potential. So I think that's where I think AI should go. Unmoderated should be more about observation, the day in life studies observation happening through an AI, rather than having AI conduct interviews and sessions. I think that's not going to be so much fruitful in my understanding so far. Yeah.
Okay. I think we spoke about, how, sorry, just a second. Yeah, we spoke about decision making and acceleration of research through platforms with AI enablement. But the flip side of it is now you are able to move very fast. So research could become just a checkbox in your list of things to do, right? And very performative. Uh, so what's your thought there, or like what are some practices or guardrails you follow with your team to ensure that you're not just doing research for the sake of research? I know we touched upon it earlier, but I just want to like deep dive into this.
I mean, that's a question I think I struggle myself as well, if I be very honest about it, right? I mean, like as a researcher trying to design, I know that I'm not doing justice at certain points when I'm actually quickly taking decisions to design products, right? But I think I'm sure people who would have gone through the transition would have seen that experience themselves also. That sometimes, like you don't have the time or the luxury of the time as well. So what I feel is that fast then becomes, I would say, I position more on that, not like fast research, but like focused research. So, if you treat your research activity like not a fast activity, but a focused activity, then it's not feeling like a checkbox. Then it's like a meaningful check, like it's a meaningful action that you have done. So, if you add more meaning to your actions, like in terms of why am I talking to synthetic user, for example, for XYZ decision making, right? For validating my ideas and stuff like that. If there's a meaning behind that, can actually still be a good way to not make it like a checkbox, but make it like a thoughtful way of approaching. Anything that you add meaning to it will become important to you, right? And then it's not like a checkbox, it's like a meaningful action that you have done. That's number one. Number two, obviously, is the part where you actually sensitize yourself with the aspect of research, the value of it, and the credibility of end users' perspective and all that. I think now everybody I've seen in organizations, across organizations, they want to be user first.
Yeah.
User-centered design was a movement that happens in 2000s and all that, but now everybody realizes that okay, the things are moving so fast that you want the user focus to actually guide you in the right direction, because there are right now 10 different LLMs in the market and 10 different sort of ways you can engage with the user and build some like concepts and products and ideas and all. What is differentiating between these products, I'm sure, is the way somebody is looking at the things more thoughtfully. The user aspect comes in very strongly, right? So now more than ever, the aspect is more relevant. If you add more meaning to the research process itself, it doesn't become like a checkbox, it becomes meaningful activity.
Right.
And I would say, I think a good way to is sensitize the leadership with the same aspect. Again, I circle back to that idea because I have seen that personally happen as a transition, right? Because before that, what they thought researchers were doing was just generating inside documents. They do some research in their own silos and they come back with some research, well polished slides of what the insights are and stuff like that. But if you convert that into like workshops, which are co-creating in nature, co-creation is happening, people start realizing the value of it. It doesn't become like a checkbox, it becomes like a thoughtful checkbox, right? So that's how I would put it. Add more meaning to it. Add your, if you even if you're putting one thought together in one slide, can there be a way to collaboratively come to that thought, for example? That's another way a lot of people can come together and then that meaning is added to that thing. So if all of in the organization product development cycle, right, they're sensitive to the idea of users and the user's real point of views and stuff like that, then it is a meaningful activity. And even if a small action like a workshop happens, it's a meaningful action. So it's not even, it's a meaningful workshop and a meaningful sort of way of collaborating and coming together, basically. So that's how I've been trying to fight this whole idea. Because I'm now on the other side of this table where I'm trying to move very fast with my designs and stuff like that, I still question that many times. Like, for example, we recently put together an MVP of a product, of a particular workflow. And since that day itself, it's not even live right now. I'm already working on a thoughtful way of looking at phase 2. Because MVP for me was to put the organization into one perspective. Okay, hey, we need something like this. Everybody is aligning to that. Top down, a lot of pressure is there to build that product in the market. But let's just take the time when the MVP is in the market, people are trying to use it. Let's use it as a case study for, build some better ideas. And then do a thoughtful way of approaching this. So I'm already building that research document or that approach process plan that I'm going to put together and case study around it and stuff like that, right? So maybe that's another way we can try it out. I think I've seen a lot of times researchers have to be very hustling in nature. We cannot be very academic in nature. I mean, like I've a lot of good people as research I've been idolizing, I try to idolize is people who have hustled into the research aspect and then still find value. And they know how to sell the research aspect. That's the most important aspect. Like one of my good mentors, Manoj, one of my first mentor in the research space, I used to, like till now, he's one of the great guy to sell the idea of research to companies. If you talk to him for half an hour, you know that, okay, there is a value in what I'm going to do with this person, right? That I think should be the real essence I think a researcher should have. And that could be another way we can thoughtfully approach it, and it doesn't become like a checkbox, but a meaningful checkbox,
Right.
like that, I would say.
Okay. Cool. Then I think we can close this off. I have one last question for you, right? Now, given all these tools and pressure in the market to kind of keep evolving, keep moving faster, what's one mindset shift you would advise or recommend, not just researchers, but designers or anyone who works in product to have uh, with research in mind? Like, what kind of mindset should you approach?
I mean, coming from I think it will be like a very big. I don't want to put any big words out there, right? Because I'm still in my journey in terms of evolving my thinking from what a user's like capturing the user perspective, insights, value of insight into strategy, into product design. So I think I'm still in my journey. So I will not say any big words in terms of what the mindset should be for the industry. But what do I see as my own takeaway in this thing so far to kind of guide my own work? I would say, I think always be curious and ask, like the why questions, right? The 3 levels of why, if you can ask the fundamental, there's so many ways people, first principle thinking, somebody calls it 5
Yeah.
whys, and how might be statements and stuff like that, right? So there are many keywords on it, but my only like a theme that I'm always getting from that is keep questioning, keep asking. Just say, for example, you were thinking about, critiquing to the ChatGPT itself, right? Critique its own choices. That is another thing, result of a why question only, right? Why can I not answer and ask a question to GPT back? Why can I not, go to the core of how it is putting together an answer, for example, right? So I would say, I think a lot of the thought process shift has to happen towards whys. And that, I think, academic training from NID actually has helped me to do that, by the way, right? I mean, like the fundamental way that first day of the course, there's nothing like a course. Everything is like open. So you do what you want to do and you ask all the whys that you want to ask, and then you put together an idea. I think that has been part of my rigor. Maybe that is why I'm still talking about that, because that changes the way, that changes the way in which you think about any product, any research statement, any brief, any strategy document that you come across, any research output that you come across. You always question why somebody's talking about this in this way. Why could we not be in this way, right? Like that kind of question, right? Like designers thrive on that, but then we kind of forget that sometimes, like we consider it to be like basics.
Yeah, and
Sometimes, right?
moreover, with LLMs giving you the answer, I'm sorry, not
Yeah.
LLMs, AI giving you the answer instantly, we ask why, but it's not always a meaningful why. So I
Yeah.
like
No,
what
I've
you
fallen
said.
this
Yeah.
trap actually. Yeah. I myself have fallen this trap. Like, if I be very honest, right? I've been trying to churn out a lot of my ideas and a lot of my products also using assistance from AI quite a lot. But what I'm trying to do recently in my current work is like keep thinking of a thoughtful question around that. Like keep taking a pause in that. So like one of the things that I was coming across recently in prompt laddering is the concept, right? What is that actually? Is like just to break it down into pieces and then start building a ladder around it, right? And then the whole output will be much more logical than what you're actually doing right now. So that's how I think about it. So I have fallen this trap myself, the love of, seeing something come alive so fast. But you can use that as a reference, as okay, this is what it is. Somebody's recommending, it's hypothesis. Can I try something from 10 different questions, starting from 10 different why questions that I think about, right? I think, practicing that muscle, I think that is the best way to do it. Like, for example, every day when we wake up, it's very easy for us to feel, we are feeling happy, we are feeling sad sometimes, right? I remember one of the exercises that I used to do in NID was to, every day when I used to wake up, I used to write how my emotions are and visualizing my emotions. Now that became like a half an hour ritual of thoughtfully questioning why and what is happening to me. And then over 1 month or 2 months and 6 months of span, I could see a trend emerging. And that is where the aha moment happens. So you also can actually keep the AI output as our reference, but try to build it into still the building blocks of it, and then you can see the value of it, I would say.
Awesome.
That's all.
Yeah, that's a great tip for me and others listening to this podcast, I'm sure. Yeah, thanks so much, Divya. It's been a amazing couple of half hour. I don't know, a short while talking to you,
Yeah.
and I feel like I learned a lot from this conversation.
Oh, no, please. I mean, I always think of my conversation as a way to mutually learn and, like sort of, share knowledge in that
Yeah,
way. I think the best way is to actually, that's the way we learn things.
absolutely.
I mean, like, now that you asked me the question, it actually made me to reflect on my own
Mm.
thoughts. So even if I'm doing it every day, I'm waking up and writing my emotion, but now I give a thoughtful way of, why it is happening,
Yeah.
right? Like that. So this is helpful for me as well, that way to reflect.
Awesome.
Reflection is the big keyword with AI right now. I feel. I mean, that's a shortcut. I think that's another keyword, right?
Yeah.
Using AI to reflect upon things. That's the only way you can actually, that's the way you can actually start the journey from. That's enough for now. Not asking for answers, but reflections.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah,
another way.
absolutely. I think that's how we need to evolve how we interact with
Yeah.
AI. I think that is also constantly evolving. So, yeah, thanks for that.
Right. That's true.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of User Insights. We hope you gained valuable insights from our conversation.